Good morning, once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite we quite have a longer vacation in terms of these lessons, but this is a continuation of what we have the last time. It was about communication in the health industry. So to move on, we have these responsibilities of a school principal, education, working communication. So how does communication work within the education field? Okay, so we're about to find out. Okay, so we have here the what do you see in the picture? Okay, so you see the responsibilities of a school principal. So first of all, it includes leading the teachers, the students, and staff members. So that's management. Handling student discipline. So whenever some problematic students or would surface, you have to handle them along with the guidance counselor, of course. Then developing and implementing school programs, it's your job, and hiring and evaluating teachers, or even firing some of them. So the principal has a lot his uh, hands to work on. Okay, he has his hands full in terms of responsibilities. Okay, so what's the main role of a principal? So for those education students who are aiming to be a principal in a school someday, well, these are the things that you need to be familiar of, or if not, to be an expert of. Okay, number one is managing effective communications. It's a crucial dimension in leadership. So this is stressed in Kiwi's leadership for principals, according to the Ministry of Education and in uh, Taiko. Okay, cultural competencies for teachers of Maori learners. So the cultural competencies of Wainanga and Wanawanga contain useful behavioral indicators and outcomes specific to leaders that can be applied in all situations. So this is a study conducted in these places, but they are still applicable to all principals all over the world. So effective communication underpins the knowledge, skills, and dispositions principal required to have a direct and indirect influence on student outcomes, as identified in the best evidence synthesis on leadership. So taking time to review your communication strategy and ideas will be time well spent. So many problems in and out of schools can be directly traced to the effectiveness of your and your school's communications, whether the information was communicated or not, what was communicated or how it was communicated, and who communicated it. So taking time to think about what you want to say will also ensure you maintain your integrity and professionalism, that of your school and the wider educational community. So that's how important communication is. Integrity has something to do with keeping your word, or as a man of your word. And of course, professionalism is staying uh, in your line of profession. Okay, so communication planning. So communication doesn't just happen; it has to be planned. Okay, so principals apply a range of formal and informal communication skills every day. So communications may be deliberately planned or ad hoc, like a face-to-face or virtual, written, video, or verbal. So digital or non-digital. So sometimes just to choose among these options is already a big decision on the part of the leadership. And by the way, these are not just applicable, I think, for principals, but any leaders or managers as a whole. Okay, so you can use a table like the one below to help you get an overview of your communications, like who, why, and how. Like students. So why do you have to communicate to that student, or how do you do this? To the leadership team, to the teachers, parents, current and prospective. So you can use Facebook, LMS, newsletters, face-to-face presentations, phones, special events, learning conferences, parent-teacher evenings, etc. So you can just fill these things up according to how you would like to communicate with them and why you need to communicate with them. So many people to communicate to: the board chair, the board members, local principals, other schools, mentors, supervisor, outside agencies, for example, the Ministry of Education, or in our case, you have the CHED, a parent-teacher association or alumni association. Or how do you communicate to the media? How do you issue news items to them for broadcast and other stuff? Okay, then consider how effective your existing communication strategies are. Like, what are your key reasons for communicating with your audiences? What are your key messages? Are your reasons for communicating helping you lead change or lead learning in your school? How do you ensure your key messages are communicated clearly and consistently? It's not open for other interpretations. So, how does the way you are communicating helps you build trusting and respectful relationships with your audiences? How do your communication strategies change over time? Are there 2 or 3 aspects of communication that you should emphasize during the next year? Or when did you last review your strategies? What feedback on them do you have or do you need? Okay, so these are a lot of questions to answer that can help you double check on the quality and the content of your communications. So it may be useful for a board to have a policy or a practice on who communicates formally on behalf of the school, for example, if contacted by the media. It is essential to understand the requirements of New Zealand's privacy and copyright laws, or in our case, in the Philippine laws. Okay, that's why in the Philippine government, we have a speaker. We used to have Speaker Panelo to be the one doing the communications. Now we have Roque. So whenever there were questions about what the government is doing, so he is the one who faces the media and communicates to the media, and probably issues written communications as well. So that's a tough shoes to fill up. Okay, so in school communication, so these are communications inside a school. So what do you need to remember? So internal communication is just as important as communicating outside the school. So elements of good practice for internal communications include championing and being a good role model for clear and consistent communication. So you have to make sure you have good grammar, you have good pronunciation, you are, other than that, character wise, you don't use bad words and other stuff, or you don't pin what do you call this, put somebody down with your messages, or some things, or you don't offend people, though you cannot really please everybody, but at least be as gentle and as honest and as consistent with your communication as possible. Okay, matching your words to your actions. So this is a part of developing integrity as a leader. I have watched a video what on the fall down or on the fall of Ellen DeGeneres, because in the show you see a person who's very likable, but when the director says cut, then you lose that smile, then he begins to frown and he begins to shout at everybody about the script and other stuff. So, and people in the workplace begins coming out and told the media about what she is and how she treats people in the workplace, and that's, now she's a nobody believes on her anymore. She lost her integrity as a communicator. Okay, so next, be committed to open or two-way communication. You're not just leaning towards one side. This is the problem with our Philippine journalism uh, most of the journalists that we have, especially in the mainstream media, are tainted with biases. So even in the print and uh, internet technology, so you can see their way of questioning, their way of interpreting the events are somehow biased towards somebody, or uh, what do you call this? Uh, you see the leanings towards other people and their distaste towards the other groups. So it should not be. So there should be um, an open two-way communication. Then there's also this face-to-face communication, like student, problem student, and dealing with them. So it has to be on a face-to-face communication basis while communicating with empathy. So you have to communicate bad news as effectively as good news. Okay, so sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it. That's what they say. So seeing communication as an essential leadership capability, not as a set of techniques. Okay, things to try to improve your communication. So first, you gotta have external feedback. Okay, external feedback. Okay, so you have to consider using an interviewer from outside the school, such as your mentor or principals, appraisers, to carry out a fact-finding review. So the interviewer needs to be someone you can rely on to give you honest and constructive feedback. So prepare yourself to handle any criticism that may be brought up. Try to view any criticisms as constructive. When you establish that you appreciate feedback and actively take it on board, then people will keep you well informed. Okay, so feedback is things that you can hear from somebody outside your organization. So you might ask an interviewer to, number one, ask what the 2 or 3 most important school development actions and intentions you have been communicating to staff are. And you can ask a range of staff that they think you have been communicating about and your effectiveness in communicating about those topics. Or the interviewer simply takes notes and does not comment on the descriptions apart from seeking clarity. So 4 or 5 staff from the range of context is plenty. So in a small school, maybe 1 or 2 at most. Okay, then you can ask them to interview 5 or 6 students across the range of year levels. Ask each to describe what you have been communicating. This may be best done in small groups to assist the flow of description and to bring out the range of views. Or you can ask them to write up what has been discovered and report back to you on the style and effectiveness of your communication. So you have to know these things you can ask people or third parties to do this for you so that their opinions are not influenced in any way by your power, for example. So it's a reliable source of feedback. Okay, so you may be able to identify gaps and issues with the interviewer. Check whether the choices you've made about the methods you're using are the best ones to focus on. So after getting the snapshot of your communication, use it to help shape new communications. Include this review and your reflections as part of your appraisal. Like in UM, how does the administration communicate with the students? So what we did is we put monitors on the hallways, one in the G2 building and the other one in the education department. So, oh no, on the DPT building. So whenever there are announcements, they just flash it on the screen. So students who are passing by can have a chance to be informed about it. Or sometimes, depending on the offices, if the particular offices, they just post bulletin boards outside their office to post like deadlines for submission of scholarship applications and other stuff. Okay, that's for external feedback. Okay, how about internal feedback? Okay, you can ask a trusted and experienced colleague to provide honest and constructive feedback on any presentations you make. So ask for feedback on a few specific aspects, such as the clarity of your message, the quality of your message, the audience response, the presentation style, or ask for feedback on one thing you did well, one thing you did thing you could improve on or do differently next time. Sometimes they do that with a checklist for like a survey form. So just for you to find out on how you can improve in this area. So you can use this feedback strategy several times a year, whenever you are conducting seminars or conducting meetings, for example. And remember that this evidence of professional growth and reflection can also feed into your appraisal. Okay, next, visiting staff workspaces. So by recognizing the individual natures and circumstances of staff members, principals strengthen trust and connectedness across the staff as a whole. So in any good communication, it is important to establish trust and confidence, without which your message may be lost, misconstrued, or worse, be ignored. So you build understanding and rapport with staff by meeting with them with their own workspaces from time to time. Staff talking in their own workspaces will be able to put their views across more clearly in context and are more likely to tell you that the reality of what is going on more quickly. So consider informal walks through classrooms, then going along the faculty meetings in an informal capacity. So conversely, reprimand, criticism, or any disciplinary communication should take place in your office, where you set the stage and the level of formality you want. Remember, praise in public, correct in private. We don't want to have principals running around the workspaces and shouting at you at your mistakes. So whenever you need to, as a principal, whenever you need to correct somebody among your staff, you have to call their attention on your office and speak to them privately. Okay, but whenever they did something right, they did something good, it's okay to announce it in public. That creates self-esteem. Okay, the same, you can treat the same with your children, your future children. Always praise in public among their friends, but don't correct them in the presence of their friends, especially. That's very damaging to a child. Okay, listening. Effective communication is a two-way process, as what has been mentioned in the past. Bear in mind that you will learn more when you are listening than when you are speaking. So in that, people will not open up to those they consider poor listeners. So you have to consider focusing on the moment and the person speaking, adopting a listening attitude. Avoiding distractions, for example, move away from your computer and put away your phone when somebody's talking. So it's not even polite that whenever you talk to a person face to face and you put your phone on top of the table, other people find that very insulting. It's because whenever that phone rings, you would have to stop the conversation just to accommodate the phone, and that's a no-no. Okay, what else? Asking questions instead of just giving answers. Okay, so then you have to consider that. Okay, giving your full attention to what the other party is saying, not just thinking about what you want to say next. That's a defensive style of listening. Like when the person opens his mouth, you are already thinking about how to rebut the person. It is always best to listen to what the other person is saying. Sometimes disagreements are settled that way. Okay, so what else? That's the problem with the NPAs. The NPAs don't want to listen. The government is opening their table, their arms for negotiations. Then they don't want to talk. They just want to make trouble. So the president is done with it. So he declared them terrorists. So I hope there'll be an end of them as soon as possible in this country. 52 years of ruining our lives. So much for that. Okay, if they don't want to listen, then full force of the law should be applied. Okay, what else? Focus on what might you learn instead of what you want to teach or instruct. And it's very difficult if you are already a principal in that case. It takes a lot of humility to do that. What else? Asking how you might help a person. So let's say that one of your staff is always absent. So instead of just scolding the person, you're such an irresponsible employee, you're always absent or you're always late. Why not offer and help? But if the person is suffering from traffic or he has his way of communication or his commute is really very difficult, and the person would appreciate if you ask how you can help. Probably you can offer the person a ride or anything, something that can help. Okay, seeking clarification and explanation, especially when the tone of the speaker is somewhat critical. So this is important. If the person, especially, for example, is person is offering what complaining about something, and how do you deal with that? So the best way is to clarify and let the person explain. Okay, so this is what I like about our dean in the case department. So there was a time there was a complaint against me from a student. Then the good thing that the dean did is he called my attention, and I went to her office and we talked. I showed her some evidences and she listened, and she even defended me in the end to the management. So I wasn't scolded. I wasn't given the memo of the administration, because they understood where I'm coming from, and they saw that the student has it's the problem, it's not me. Okay, then what else? Restating what you think they have said to seek clarity and agreement. Okay, so you were saying that you were offended with what I did. So that's an example of asking for clarity. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to have your colleague removed from this department, okay, because of misbehavior. So you clarify that. It makes them understand. Or you can say, so you were offended with what I did because you thought I was going against you. So that's restating. Okay, so that clears up misunderstandings. Okay, what else? Checking whose voices are missing or underrepresented. Okay, so if there are complaints against the janitorial not doing their job well, then on your faculty meetings, they should send a representative from the maintenance department to speak for that concern. Okay, then adopt a listening approach to sounds of learning at your school, such as evidence of curiosity, inquiry, earnest endeavor, shared thinking and collaboration, and teacher facilitation. Sounds of teachers' shared approach to teaching, such as team teaching, collaboration, collaborative planning, questioning, and supporting. You can also adopt an analytical ear for the sounds you want to hear that are absent. You want to hear but would prefer not to hear. You hear but you prefer not to hear. Okay, so these are analytical ears for the sounds. Okay, add all these sounds to your knowledge bank about the school and use them at appropriate times to make progress at development. Okay, so communication. How do you communicate with the community? Okay, so you have to begin with the end in mind. Remember that principals strengthen partnerships and networks to enhance student learning. So you have to involve everybody in the community to educate the children. So extend your knowledge so that you become an expert in your school community. Share so that education becomes everyone's business. Okay, have a broad and simple community communication goal that is appropriate to your school setting. So, for example, a new principal in a small rural school may decide to develop and maintain strong interactive communication patterns with each family about their children's education. So, why is the child struggling to go to school? And you soon find out that they have problems with food. There's no breakfast when the child goes to school every day. So, I think you can do something about it, or you can ask the other barangays to support by providing them some relief goods so that the child's education would not be affected. So these are just examples of how communication can benefit the student. Okay, a new principal in a large urban school may decide that during the first year, my communications within across the school community will help me gain a clear understanding of how things are done around here. You would understand uh, the the industry that the school is in. So somehow that will help you how students learn and what's the influence of their families. For example, here in the Philippines, you find out that most parents want their children to graduate because to find a good job. There's not much teaching going on to tell the child to study in order for you to put up your own business, to be an entrepreneur. Much of that culture around the Philippines, we always think of being an employee or being good professionals, paid professionals. In that sense, so it's a matter of understanding what we are, where we are in. Okay, so check that you are listening and communicating with all of your school community, student, staff, Wano, Iwi, and Hapu. So these are New Zealand terms in the local community. Go to them as well as finding ways to make them feel welcome at school. So these are the different communication methods that you can use. You can use a personal communication method. So your moods, actions, and demeanor really matter. So your body language, moods, and actions convey powerful messages. Okay. Confidence in what you are saying and doing is essential. So studies suggest that if you appear confident, others are more likely to agree to what you might propose. Conversely, the less confidence you appear in your own message, so the more objections you are likely to meet. So believe in what you say. That's what they say. So failure to complete or carry out a routine task suggests a routine is not important. Similarly, failure to follow through on a goal or a promise will undermine your credibility. So ensure the link between what you say and what you do remains close. So if a disparity develops between them for any reason, then you have to explain why. You take the president, for example, when Digong said before the election, I will try to wipe out the drug industry in less than 2 years. Okay, so right away after he was installed as the president, he worked into action right away. He put the Bato de la Rosa and into work, and it's first time in history you see drug addicts and drug pushers come out. Others asking for help for rehabilitation. Others are given warnings. They're not even put to jail right away. They were given chances to improve, and they were monitored. So remember the Oplan Tokhang? When we talk about building a lot of infrastructure that is still in the work. And he talked about fighting corruption. Even his close friends and allies are kicked out of offices when he hears even rumors of corruption. So that's why his credibility rose up to 91%. Can you imagine what kind of president has the support of 91% of the population? Look at America, for example. They're so divided, equally divided, the Republicans and the Democrats. You see that in every election. The Obama and the Trump elections was so close. Now Biden and Trump election is even so close. So can you just imagine when you become president? Imagine that almost half of the country is against you. That's really difficult to operate. But here in the Philippines, you have 9 out of 10 people supporting you. So what happens to the, not even the 10% is against him. It's just like around 5%. The others are not undecided. So can you just imagine? It's because of the way he takes care of his credibility. He's been in the government service since as a mayor, as a fiscal, and he's been consistent with what he says. And that's why people admire him, not only in the Philippines but with other leaders as well. Even I think Bush mentioned that if I am to be followed, I would follow Duterte. So that's how they look up President Duterte. When he says, I will clean up Boracay, I will clean up Baywalk. It's like words have magic. So it's once in a while you can see, once in a lifetime you can see leaders like that. And we thank God for providing us that kind of leader. Okay, remaining approachable while being regarded and consulted as a professional leader with significant knowledge about teaching, learning requires principals to maintain a cheerful demeanor even if the going is tough. So the grumpiness of a principal can quickly pervade their school. So that's one thing you have to, as a manager, not only as a principal, as a manager, as a leader, as a supervisor, you have to always keep watch of your cheerful demeanor. Okay, remember that you are now a public figure and subject to more scrutiny or examination than you were as a teacher. So be careful, be clear, consistent, and transparent so that all members of the community know that what they see is what they get. Enjoy answering questions and discussing the school vision and goals. And listen attentively to all community members. So there's a movie about Radical Principal, starring, what do you call this, Samuel Jackson. The title of the movie is Lean on Me. So it's a very tough principal. It's a really good movie about education. It's a true story as well. So try to watch that. Lean on Me. Yeah, I think that's the title of the song. The title of the movie. Okay, so how do you handle phone calls and emails? Okay, treat calls and emails as an important part of the job. So these are often the first experience people have in your school. So you have to put people there or in your office if you have a secretary, or you can do this yourself. So have an enthusiastic phone voice manner even on the worst day. Okay, clearly identify yourself. Use the email subject line to your advantage, that is, as a short summary. Okay, put aside time to answer phone calls and emails. So this helps you with time management. So perhaps publicize the best time to ring the newsletters. Answer phone messages and emails within 24 hours if possible, but don't rush answers that you need longer time to think about. Okay, so for example, somebody called you up and you were not around, so you have to ask, you have to tell the secretary to ask for the return call number so you can call them within 24 hours if possible. So try for a balance of 5 calls home to praise students or everyone that is critical. Check that the school's sweep answer phone messages, hold music, and so on are compatible with school goals and context. So make them warm, welcoming, and inclusive. Now, how do you handle face-to-face communications? Always listen carefully. Try not to interrupt. Think about how much you would dislike it yourself if you're talking and nobody wants to listen, right? So appreciate critics and thank them. Okay, thank you for your observations. can say that to your critics. You can treat each conversation as being crucial. Okay, ensure your agendas are applied. Take advantage of face-to-face meetings to initiate a new discussion about things of importance to you and your school. Okay, so there are so many things that can be done using face-to-face meetings that are really difficult to do in other format. Okay, make notes. While the person is talking, you make notes. In particular, record agreed times or dates, or you can use your cell phone to record the conversation. Tell the person you are working to what you are recording. Okay, put follow-up actions in your calendar. Work on reducing your use of conversation dead air fillers like or so, as well as some cliches or phrases, as basically, to be honest, at the end of the day, and fact of the matter is, sort of thing. As much as possible, you try to avoid those cliches. Okay, difficult conversations with adults will occur, so don't become defensive. So you have to breathe and count to 10, especially if they keep on talking and they don't want to listen. That takes the most out of you. Okay, so we're almost there. Okay, so we have different communication channels for educators. Okay, so we have internet presence. What's your school's digital footprint like? You and the board of trustees have ultimate responsibility for it. So decide whether you need to be closed or public access channels, or for whom. Choose platforms that are easy to use for your school and the audiences. Be clear, concise, professional, and safe in your content. For example, do not post images of children without parental permission. And check content enhances your school's key messages, values, and beliefs. So be careful about those postage. Have protocols in place to manage content, and have more than one person responsible for producing content, moderating content, and monitoring for appropriate responses. Now, with school events, treat all events as a great communication opportunity. So make events as culturally reflective and responsible as possible. Try personally meet and greet many parents and community members as possible. Try not to speak for too long. Keep the focus on student achievement and your school's current goals. Make it clear that the school's core business is. So, and ensure students feel included and rewarded for their effort and achievement. So thank and acknowledge the parents for their support in the learning of their children in school. I really see this being done by our president himself during graduations. Okay, newsletters can be digital or paper. Find out how parents and local community wish to receive news about the school and its events. You can offer a range of options. So school community newsletters should provide a means to inform, promote, gather, and educate. Decide on how you want the balance of these four tasks to work in each newsletter. So to get your intended audience to read the news, it's best to make it brief, to the point, and customized. Take into account a number of information people you are dealing with today. So people have become very discerning and information consumers. So these are the things to do regarding newsletters. used to have a newsletter every month, but I don't know why it stopped. Probably because of the pandemic as well. Okay, so let's skip this part. Building relationships with parents. These are just stories that you can just open this in your SIM. Okay, so this will end our lesson for today. So the next time we will be talking about effective communication and how it helps better science. Okay, for those who are studying the sciences, this will fit you. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Make sure to type done after watching this video on the section on the post, LMS post. Okay, God bless, and see you again next time.